welcome. Kindly tap the subscribe button and be subscribed to Shifting Grades. You can also share with your friends so that they may also benefit. I want us to look at stationary points, which are we have points called maximum, we have points called minimum, and we have points called a point of inflation. Therefore, we are going to study a curve. Then we are going to identify what the different points of turning are called. So stationary points at times are called turning points, and these are points where the gradient of a curve changes to zero. Then after zero now, depending on the nature, it can continue being positive or becoming negative if it was positive. It can also change from negative to positive depending on the three types of turning points. So to understand the several turning points, then we are going to study a case here. We are going to consider a curve. Consider a curve whose equation is y equals to a curve whose equation is y equals to x squared plus 2x plus 3 plus x plus 3. Yeah, let's consider an equation like this. To solve this equation, first we want to identify what we are calling turning points, and we have said that these are points at which the gradient becomes zero. The gradient of a curve becomes zero. Therefore, the gradient, first of all, gradient function of the curve will be given by 2x plus 2, because when you differentiate this function, 3 disappears, this becomes 2, this one becomes 2x. Therefore, we can have now the gradients at given coordinates of x, the gradient. Then we can also have the y functions, the coordinates. When we start from negative 3, for example, when x is negative 3, the gradient function, because it is this one, itself will be, when we substitute negative 3 in this gradient function, this will be negative 6 plus 2, we get negative 4. We can get to something like negative 1, whereby at negative 1, the gradient will be, this will be negative 2 plus 2. The gradient becomes 0. Remember, we define a stationary point as a turning point, and these are points where the gradient changes to 0. Therefore, the gradient is becoming 0. Let's check a point beyond negative 1, a point like 2. How does the curve behave? At positive 2, the gradient will be 4, 2. So here the gradient will be 6. It is very important to notice that from negative, the gradient is negative, and at negative 1, gradient is 0. But beyond negative 1, the gradient is becoming positive. This means the gradient is switching from negative through 0 to positive. And therefore, we can call negative 1, x at negative 1, the point is called a stationary point, because it is at that point where the gradient is coming. It is good we substitute the coordinates of x so that we may get y coordinates. Fixing negative 3 here, this becomes 9 plus negative 6 plus 3. So this is negative positive 3 plus 6. At this point, negative 1, here we will have 1 minus 2 plus 3. So this one becomes 4 minus 2, we get 2. Then when x is 2, this one becomes 4, this one becomes 4, this one becomes 3. Therefore, we will have 8 plus 3, 11. Therefore, these are the coordinates of y, these are the coordinates of x, and these are the values of the gradient. In other terms, if we try to do a rough sketching of the curve, you realize that 8 points x equal to negative 3. Just a rough sketching. Realize that at x equals to negative 3, y will be 11. At x equals to negative 1, y is 2, but at x y becomes 11. This means the curve at negative 1, 2, the curve is turning. The gradient is becoming 0. The curve turns. So the curve is changing from a negative gradient through 0 to a positive gradient. So because negative 1, 2 is a turning point, and it turns that it is the lowest point of y, then we say that the coordinate negative 1, 2 is called a minimum point. Therefore, it is a stationary point or a turning point whose name specifically is a minimum point, because it is the lowest level we can find a coordinate of y. The other parts of y will be found at higher heights than these two. Therefore, that is how we get stationary points, by first of all differentiating to get the gradient function, after which we fix different values of x so that we may examine how the gradient is varying. And for this case, we've seen the gradient changing from negative through 0 to positive, which means this one is called a minimum point. Therefore, trying to sketch the curve by first of all getting the coordinates of y, then we try to give a rough sketching of the curve. Then we are realizing negative 1, 2 is a minimum point. Thank you for following. Kindly subscribe to Shifting Grades and share the link. Thank you.